Welcome to Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com. I'm Brian Bielanski, and this is episode 223, I think, going with our running theme of me never being able to remember which episode is which. We've got still working out the bugs in the new studio, folks, so today's problem is my double boxes don't work. So we're going to kind of do this the old-fashioned way, and when I'm talking, you'll see me. And if I press the buttons properly, when our guest is talking, you'll see Tom. And that will be fun and awesome, I hope. So here we go. Talking about the Hoosier Racing Tire SCCA Super Tour, the Portland round. And joining me today is our guest, none other than Tom Burt. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing great, Brian. Good to be with you.
It's good to have you here. Appreciate you joining me as we get ready. We're recording this a week before the race. Next weekend, we'll all be at Portland having a great time. And Tom, I asked the same first question to every guest, and you're going to get it just like everyone else does. How did you get mixed up in this crazy sport that we love?
Oh, well, I think like probably most of us who got mixed up in this crazy sport, I've probably had the disease since I was very young. I remember playing with marbles on a woven rug on the floor of my parents' house when I was just a little guy, and every different color marble was a different manufacturer's, Formula One car. So it's been there for a long time. But really, it was I was a trial lawyer in Seattle, and a new lawyer joined our law firm, and he was building a Datsun 240Z ITS car. And I thought that was pretty exciting. So I started crewing for him a little bit and found out that he got started by going to a race school. And so I did that. I raced just a little bit for a year or two, then family and money and jobs got in the way, and I didn't. But then starting in 2001, I went back, starting with Spec Racer Ford, and bought a car, and the rest is history.
There are several different themes that we have as the answer to that question. Half of people, or maybe even a little more than half, is it's a family thing. My dad did it, my brother did it, whatever. And then another segment are people like your story, where you found somebody who was doing it, you thought it was cool, you liked cars, and you kind of got involved. When you were a kid, did you like to drive cars fast?
Drive cars fast. Even when I first started driving, I remember having a summer job. I grew up in Montana. My parents had a cabin, a summer cabin that was 85 miles away from where I worked. And my goal was when I got off work on a Friday, was to get up to the summer cabin in under an hour. So that's just one example and that was in a 1961 Buick Special. So yeah, I've always liked to drive fast. I've always liked cars and sports cars. It just took me till pretty late in life before I got involved in actually racing them. But it's been a passion ever since.
What was your first competition car after you went to that driver's school?
My first competition car was a Datsun 240Z ITS car I rented from sort of a teammate of that friend I mentioned. And I raced it for two races, one in Seattle and one at Portland. The next season, I rented what was then Formula 440, and I ran it 5 race weekends, again in the Pacific Northwest, before I sort of stopped racing. Did a little autocross a number of years later for just won 3 or 4 events, and then got back into SCCA racing with Spec Racer Ford.
When you went to Spec Racer Ford, what was the allure of that?
I spent a bunch of time researching what class I wanted to compete in. And Spec Racer Ford had a number of advantages from my perspective. One was the cars were, race cars. They were open cockpit, single seat, designed to be race cars. And that was appealing to me. The large fields, the popularity of the class, the fact that you had people to compete with, all the time, that was really attractive. And the fact that there were CSRs who could do the work on the car, maintain the car, transport the cars, all those things. That was really important to me too, because I didn't have the time or frankly the expertise to do the work on the car myself. I didn't trust myself. I wanted somebody who really knew what they were doing before I jumped in a car and drove at race car speeds. So really the combination of those things, the safety record of the SRF and the fact that it was a spec class really appealed to me, so that it was about the driver and not the car or constantly tweaking or trying to improve the car, with new go fast bits.
When I started doing this, the arrive and drive was barely a thing. Probably I would say 85% of the people at an SCCA race towed their race car to the racetrack, did all the work on it, or hired someone to do it for them. But there weren't these big, trailers with 25, 20S Spec Racer Fords or whatever. Nowadays, with all of what the world has and with all of the busyness and with families, arrive and drive, we would be really in a bad place in the SCCA if we didn't have arrive and drive, right?
I think that's right. Certainly, I mean, the Spec Racer Ford is as endured as, if not the most popular, the first or second most popular class in SCCA racing. And I think that arrive and drive characteristic, as well as the spec race and large fields part of it, I think those are all strong contributing factors. As you know, there are people who completely support their own car, uh, drag it around to the races, and are, at the top flight of national competition. But for people like myself, without the skills or really the time to do working on the car myself, having a CSR that you can work with is really hugely beneficial.
Is that how you kind of found FE2 as well? Is your CSR also your FE2 drug dealer?
Yeah. So, and it is an addiction. There's no doubt
Isn't
about
it?
it.
Yeah.
I was at I think it was 2016 runoffs that were in Mid-Ohio, and just running Spec Racer Ford. And I watched the FE race. It was before FE2. Scott Redditch won. I saw the cars and the competition with that group of cars, and that sort of got me a little interested in the car. It was the next year I started thinking about it. I found someone who rented me a car for just one regional race down at the Thunderhill track. Really enjoyed driving the car. And this was all part of my strategy, which was I wanted to race more, but I knew I wouldn't be able to race more weekends. So I wanted to race more every weekend. And so the FE2, again, it was a spec car. There were CSRs. I talked to Flat Out Racing, which was the CSR that I've worked with my spec racer, and they decided they wanted to stick just with spec racing, but they knew Bulldog Motorsports really well out of Modesto, who did support FEs. And so I talked to Jason down there. He found a car. I bought the car, raced it that first year, 2017, went to the runoffs at Indy with it as an FE, and then followed the conversion to FE2 the next year.
So, do you use the same team now for both? Do you race with the same group, or do you stay with? Did you stay with Flat Out for the Spec Racer Ford?
Flat Out for the Spec Racer Ford, because they're based out of Vancouver, Washington. I'm based out of Seattle, and I've raced with them for so many years. They do a great job. So and the guys at Flat Out are really good friends, and with the team from Bulldog, we often paddock next to each other. So it works out really well that way.
Yeah, that works out nicely, it seems. So, a lot of drivers now, or not many, but not a lot, but several are doing the Spec Racer Ford FE2 weekends together. Just talk about for a second the driving style changes that you have to make, or maybe not make, when you jump from the Spec Racer Ford into the FE2.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the challenges that I have that I'm still working on is how to drive the FE2 as an FE2 and not drive it like a spec racer. And so that's just an ongoing, driver improvement opportunity for me. But you do with the FE2, the biggest difference is the fact that you've got some downforce. But that's not the only difference. The car is really it does handle differently, and it responds I think to a different driving style. And so I'm learning that a little bit. But and at some tracks, the gearing is the same. Obviously, with the FE2, your braking point's different. Usually, you can go deeper into the corner. And so, and it's faster. Without any doubt, it's faster. It's 1,270 pounds and 185 horsepower, compared to 1,460 and 135 or so. So it's definitely a faster car. But when I originally started racing the FE, it had the SADEV sequential, and the Spec Racer Gen 2s were, and even Gen 3 initially were H pattern. Now we've moved the Spec Racer into SADEV 2. And that's actually made it a little harder because when I first started, just the shifting from one cockpit to the other and how different the cockpits were, and the different gearbox kind of helped my brain shift from one car to the other. Now with the same gearbox, sometimes I find myself approaching a corner and saying, "Wait a minute, is this the second gear or third gear this time?" And so, getting that, working through that is an ongoing challenge, frankly, for me, and it's one of the ways in which I know I can still improve in the FE.
Do you enjoy the challenge of going back and forth between the two?
I really do. I've really enjoyed racing both cars. And sometimes it's pretty exhausting, and it depends on how the schedule is constructed, whether there's any, time between the two race groups. Sometimes it's back to back. Sometimes there's only one, 15-minute qualifying or something between the two. So it can be pretty intense. And but at the same time, I really do like driving both cars, the different characteristics of the car and how it feels, and just getting all that additional seat time and time in race cars. I mean, that's that's what it's about, is time in race cars. And so I get more time that way by driving both.
Double dipping. That's also something that I think is real important to the club these days. That extra entry fee, putting more drivers in different races. That was also not something that happened very often back in the day. Kind of a semi-new phenomenon that allows you to pack more into one weekend. And I'm guessing that's the biggest reason why you do it.
That is the reason I do it, is to get more time in race cars in a single weekend. Yeah, absolutely. Until recently, when I retired, between family and work, there were just so many weekends that I could go racing, and so I wanted to, get more time in cars during that limited number of weekends. And that's what it was all about.
Yeah, for some people it's a time thing. For other things, it's a money thing. The most expensive cost of a race weekend is going back and forth and hotels and all of that. And an extra set of tires and an entry fee is pretty much cost efficient.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps in that way. But on the other hand, really for me, the most expensive component of my annual racing expenditure is towing the car. Because I do travel and go to racetracks and, different places around the country. That's the most expensive component. And since I've got two different CSRs, one in Southern Washington, in Vancouver, Washington, and the other in Modesto, it's a lot of car towing, and the CSRs who take care of that for me, that's great, but it is an expensive component of it. And with two cars, I'm paying for two towing fees, to get both of them to a single race weekend.
Yeah, I guess that is the tough part of not working with one team that will service both of the cars. There's no way to get them on the same transporter.
Yeah, but even then, I'm willing to bet that if you could, they'd still want to charge you twice because you're taking up two spots in their transporter. So, and as I've always said, hey, I'm grateful that we have these CSRs, that they're as professional as they are. They do such great work to prep the cars.
So when you have back-to-back races and there's no break between the two, do you sometimes have to make a decision to bag out of the first race to make it easier to get into the car for the second race, maybe even for qualifying?
The closest I've come to that sometimes in practice, rarely, but occasionally in qualifying, is to cut one session a little bit short and or start the next session a little bit late. But I've never had that problem with racing. It's been a challenge sometimes. The crew will roll one car down to pre-grid so I can pull off the track and just park the car, in impound or someplace nearby and jump out of that car and jump in the other car and head out, onto the next into the race. But um, even when it's been back to back, I haven't actually had it affect a race itself. I've been able to complete one and get into the other one, but sometimes it's been a lot of laps in a row.
So this year you're doing every Super Tour, and you're doing that because you retired. I didn't know you had retired until I saw a video posted, and I'm gonna post a link to the video in the show notes here because everybody has to see it. You've got some singing chops.
Yeah, I did a lot of singing growing up and over the years, and did musical theater in high school and some in college, and then again some in a community theater that I ran into a number of years ago as an adult. So yeah, I've done a lot of singing and really enjoy that. And just had this inspiration to do the video for a retirement announcement, and it came together really great. Mostly because of the help of my sister, who really was who made that possible for me in a lot of ways. But it was really fun doing it.
I don't want to give too away. I want people to actually watch the video, but I'll just say, not only does Tom look a little like Frank Sinatra, he actually sings a little like Frank Sinatra, and we'll leave it right there as far as that goes. Talk about the commitment, though, to do all 10 rounds of the Super Tour. That sounds like a retirement dream.
It was definitely a decision I made to sort of celebrate the retirement for myself, was to run all 10 Super Tours in the Spec Racer. I'm not doing that with the FE2. I think I'm running four Super Tours in the FE2, and but all 10 in the Spec Racer. And yeah, it was something that I just thought this would be a really fun thing to do. And I would have the opportunity to run some tracks that were kind of on my bucket list that I never run before. We've gotten through all of those. The rest of the tracks I've been to at least once, but it's giving me a chance to go back to a couple. I haven't been back to Mid Ohio since that runoffs in 2016, I think it was. And I've only been to Watkins Glen once or twice. And so, good chance still with the remaining tracks to get some track time on some great tracks. But it's a big time commitment. This month coming up, we've got Portland, and then the very next week is Mid Ohio, and then the very next week is a major race back here at the track in Seattle that I want to support. So I'm gonna have 3 race weekends in a row. So it's a lot more of a time commitment for sure. But yeah, it's kind of a thing to do to celebrate retirement, and it's been great fun so far. I haven't had great luck in some cases during these races, and I haven't always driven as well as I was hoping to, but that's racing.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a stretch of the Super Tour if you're doing all of them. And Greg and I switch between which one of us goes to each race. But I've got Portland, Mid-Ohio, and Road America. And we've got a race at Willow Springs here for Cal Club that I do as well. So I've got 4 of the next 5 weekends I'm going to be away. And thankfully, I have a very understanding wife and a kid that likes to go with me when possible. So it works out well. Which were the bucket list tracks that you didn't have never been to that you've gotten to go to this year?
It was Sebring and Road Atlanta. Those were the two that I'd never been to before that were really on the bucket list. And of course, I think all the first 4 races were all new tracks because there was the new circuit
Right.
at Buttonwillow, which was new, and then also NOLA. I had not been to NOLA before, but really was looking forward to racing at Sebring, and I want to go back because that was one of the tracks that was a bad luck track for me, and I really enjoyed rode Atlanta a lot. Super challenging, super fun track to drive. So yeah, I was really fortunate to get a chance to race at both of those tracks and liked them a lot.
What did you think of the new circuit at Buttonwillow?
I like the new circuit at Button Willow. I think it's going to get better as they, complete the work on the various facilities there. And I liked old Button Willow a lot too. I mean, the pavement's getting old and challenging, but it always has been a fun track to race. The new circuit's got a nice flow to it, and I enjoyed racing there.
All right, so I'm gonna take a short break to thank the people that helped me do this podcast. Tom, if you'll hang tight with me for a second while I do that, and then we'll come back and chat more about Portland, which is the next stop on the Super Tour. Of course, I want to thank all of the folks who helped me do this. Ray Esports is the official sim racing league of Inside the SCCA. Love what Stevie Ray does with his races on Tuesday nights and the Weekend Warriors. If I wasn't here talking to Tom, I'd probably be strapped myself into a sim racing Formula V right now and doing a race with those guys. Really like what they do there. Also, want to thank, of course, the good people at raceschool.com. Actually, let's do Solo Performance Specialist first because they're the ones that popped up on the screen. Solo Performance Specialist Dave Whitworth and all of his good people and are doing a bunch of great stuff for the solo community. They're at most of the solo national events, and they also have a great online presence. So if you need something like I did last year when I had to buy belts for my car, just called up Dave. He got me all hooked up, sent them out here to California and put them in the car. Really good people. Check them out, Solo Performance Specialists. Now, we get to raceschool.com. The presenting sponsor of Inside the SCCA. Love what they do. They're based at Buttonwillow, and now we have 2 tracks at Buttonwillow, so that's a nice little feature for them. They do a great job with their full SCCA accredited driver school. You can go, and of course you need to pass, but if you do pass, you get an SCCA license and you get to go racing. They also have defensive driving. They have some performance driving stuff as well, so lots of opportunities with raceschool.com. And then finally, William R. Pinterick and Associates. Dave Pinterick is one of us. He's a GT1 and Spec MX5 racer. He's out there helping people with all their financial needs. If you're like me and not very smart in the financial department, you go to someone like Dave, and he points you in the right direction. So check out Dave at William R. Pinterick and Associates. All of the links to our partners are in the show notes. All right, getting back to the show here. My guest, Tom Burt, Spec Racer Ford and FE2 driver. And of course, this is our Portland Super Tour preview show. Tom, how many hundreds of laps do you have around Portland?
Well, I don't know. I've been racing now 24 years, and Portland is as close to a home track really as I've got. So it's a lot. I can't even count, but it's got to be in the hundreds.
Portland's interesting. I mean, it's unlike anything I've ever been to. It's basically a city park with a racetrack around it. It's in the middle of the city, which is often verboten these days because no one wants to hear race cars in their backyard. Yet they keep it going, and it's got a lot of character for a track that doesn't have a lot of elevation changes.
Yeah, I mean it's really amazing that it's as close to downtown Portland as it is, which is fantastic for people who travel to visit and come race with us at the Super Tours or any of the races at Portland, because it's really easy to get to downtown Portland and all the food and entertainment opportunities there. And so that's great. There's a group called the Friends of PIR, which is a group of racers and those who support racing who work to continue to make sure that the racetrack remains a vibrant part of the Portland community and try to address complaints that arise from the neighborhood from time to time and make sure that the track stays active. But it's great, as you know, IndyCar races there almost every year. Other professional series will come and race there. It's a fantastic facility. It is a very flat track, and yet it's a very challenging and interesting track at the same time with some great, mid-speed sweepers, slower speed chicane, a couple of higher speed corners, and just it's a fun and challenging track with a couple good passing zones as well. So it makes for a good racetrack.
I love the part about Portland being kind of, you don't think of Portland necessarily as a destination place for vacations and that kind of thing until I got there and realized, we booked a late flight out on Monday because we're going to run up to Mount Hood for a couple of hours Monday morning before we go out. And there's, the beautiful area south of Portland. You're not far from Mount Rainier if you want to head up to Washington. It's a great way to spend a week to do non-racing stuff with the family and still go racing.
Absolutely. And the Oregon wine country and the Oregon wineries are really among the best in the country, if not in the world. Fantastic wines there. And opportunity to go do some wine tasting if you want, that's nearby, as well as get out to the ocean if you want to head out to the Pacific Ocean coast. And so lots of opportunities for vacation time around there. And yet here's this racetrack right just on the outskirts of downtown in the city of Portland. It's great.
And the food scene is awesome in Portland, by the way. All right, so what does it take to go fast around PIR? What's maybe the one or two corners you got to make sure you get? What's the key?
Is that corner that takes you onto the longest straight. And so at Portland, there's two that are the most important. Turn 7, which leads onto this long back straight that's curving. And so it doesn't look like a straightaway, but it's flat out in every car, I think. And that corner, turn 7, is a really interesting and fun corner because it's a very wide entry, and there's some off-camber portions to sort of the outside of it, especially at turn in. And so getting that line and just getting the carry your speed in, but get the car rotated enough and stay on track at the exit. All of those are good challenges to an important corner that takes you all the way down that back straight. And then you come around to turn 12, which is a sweeper, a right-hand sweeper onto the main straight, and a bit of a longer sweeping corner as compared to 7. And that's another important corner to get right, and one that's challenging because at track exit, there's a bit of a wall right there. And so you need to make sure that you nail your line and get it just right, so that you can get through that corner and head on down the main straight with as much speed as you can carry through it. So those are the two important corners. But there's also a whole series of, I call them mid speed sweepers, turns 4 all the way through over until you get to turn 7. And you spend a lot of time in that part of the track. And so getting your car to handle really well through those mid-speed sweepers is also key to a fast lap at Portland.
And turn 12 is pretty bumpy. So if you're in an FE2 or a Spec Racer Ford, you got to take that into account too, right?
Yeah, it's a little bumpy, not compared to some of the tracks I've had the
Sure.
opportunity to race at this year, like Sebring, for example, or NOLA, where the track's really quite bumpy. There are some bumps at the braking zone a little bit. There's a spot where the track ends, and a lot of people drop a tire off of just at track exit as you go by this point of the wall that I was talking about that can upset the car a bit. But overall, the track is pretty smooth for spec racers and FE2s. You don't have to worry a lot about bumps as a key consideration in your setup or in driving.
Let's talk about the chicane for a moment. I've seen chicanes in a lot of different racetracks. I don't think there's any chicane anywhere in the world that's built like the one at Portland.
Yeah, it's very different, in that you get that initial 90-degree turn right around a wall. And there's a drop, a little bump at the apex, that you can drive through. In fact, they've paved underneath there a little bit. It used to just be dirt, but now it's got some pavement. But there's a definite thump as if you go inside the track into that corner of that apex, but that might be the fast way through. And then you gather it up for a slow speed left-hander that again is a pretty important corner. So you need to both carry a lot of speed in because you're coming down the straight and into that turn one, which is the right-hander, but then you also want to gather the car up for a good exit out. So it's an important both entry speed corner to sort of extend the length of that main straight and an important exit speed corner because you want to get going well on that launch down to turn four. And so, both parts of that are important for a good lap, and it's a challenge to get that just right. And you see a lot of people spinning in that corner, a lot of people headed getting off track at the exit of turn two, making mistakes there. So it's a corner that has a lot of drama frequently during a race.
How much faith do you need going into that chicane? Because it's blind going in.
Yeah, it is blind going in, although there's typically if someone spins going in, they're going to spin off to the right a little bit. There's a corner station right there at that corner. Great team of volunteer workers, SCCA workers at Portland with a lot of experience there, and they get their yellow flag out right away. So you have a lot of opportunity for a warning if there's a car that's spun or is in blocking part of the track there. On the other hand, at starts, there's often activity there, especially as people try to go side by side. Two cars can get through turn one and two side by side if you both are, have your heads up and you're doing a good job leaving racing room. When people try to go three wide, usually it ends in tears in some way.
That's pretty good. What's your favorite part about Portland?
I think my favorite part of Portland in terms of driving the track is turns 10 and 11. That's kind of a high speed chicane that's at the end of the back straight. And it's a challenging little left right, but it's really fun. And when you get it just right, the car drifts nicely through both of those corners. And it's just one of those corners that gets your adrenaline going. And after that, I would say that 4, 5, 6 series of sweeper corners and getting those just right because there's a lot of speed that you can carry there, and that's a lot of fun to drive. So those two corner complexes for me are the most fun to drive at Portland. But then I would say the other part that's really fun about Portland is just like you said, the proximity of the food scene and the opportunities to be, a tourist in Portland, which is really fun. And joining that up with a great racetrack makes it a really fun and exciting opportunity to have a great race weekend.
Yeah, we've got some family up in Seattle who are going to come down and visit us. So my wife's actually going to come with us, and I'm excited to bring her up there for all of that as well. Tom, this is the time where I get to give you a chance to thank all the people who help you do what you do. And as we get ready to wrap up here, the floor is yours for that.
Well, thanks. Thanks, Brian. You obviously have to thank your family. I need to thank my wife, Rebecca, because she not only lets me go do this, but she encourages me when she knew I was going to be around the house a lot after I retired. And I said, gee, I might be gone a lot racing. She said, goodbye, here's your helmet. What's your hurry? And so, that's really been a blessing. But, Flat Out Racing, Vic Mystery at Flat Out Racing, Jason Homan at Bulldog, and the crews at both of those CSRs. They do a fantastic job prepping our cars, taking care of me, rebuilding them when I make a mistake, transporting the cars. I mean, I just couldn't do this without them. And so I've got to thank them and their crews. They're really good at what they do. So I know that if I want to be more successful, all I have to do is drive the car better. The car's ready to win a championship. It's the driver that needs to do better. And then, I don't think any of us who race at SCCA can stop providing our thank yous without mentioning the volunteers and the workers. It's just incredible that we have so many people who show up to register us, to get us pre-gridded, to be in flagging and control, the stewards, everybody who volunteers. And sometimes in the heat of the moment at an event, it's hard to remember that they're all just volunteering to help support our addiction as drivers. My son now has been a corner worker for a number of years. Um, and it's great to have those volunteers who will show up because they love racing, to support us and support this sport that we love so much. So thank you to all the workers, all the volunteers, because we couldn't do it without you. And can't thank you enough.
We're just past the halfway mark in the Super Tour. You're doing all of them this year. Maybe at the end of this next stretch, you'll have a different answer. But are you going to try to do them all next year as well?
Probably not. It's a pretty expensive endeavor. I have a car I rented from Flat Out Racing that's traveling around the East Coast races with Scotty B. White and his traveling circus of cars that he's transporting around for a number of us drivers and himself. I had to borrow a car from a friend that got transported down with Russ Turner and his team down to NOLA so that I had a car there. And then, I have my car, which Flat Out Racing is taking around the West Coast, took to Hallett, is going to take to the June sprints into the runoffs. So, it's a lot of pieces and it's an expense. So I don't know that I'd do all 10 again. But I think I would like to do a number of them. I'd sure love to go back to Sebring again, Road Atlanta. VIR is always a great track. Watkins Glen. I'm excited to be going back to Mid-Ohio. So you can kind of see that if I can pull it off, doing many of them, even if not all of them, would be great to do that again next year.
You bring up, I always say it's my last question, and then I come up with another last question. You bring up an interesting point. Because you're in Spec Racer Ford, there are arrive and drive opportunities all over the country. You can basically go to any racetrack for any SCCA race and find someone who will rent you a car in Spec Racer Ford. There's spec cars. So they're identical, right? Every single one you get into drives exactly the same as the other one, right? And there's no differences, there's no idiosyncrasies. They're absolutely identical, right?
Yeah, wrong. They are definitely spec cars. And I remember once at a track, John Black, who has, as you know, has won national championships in both Spec Racer and GT3, super fast guy, who, supports his own car, has over the years supported his own car. And he was at a race weekend, blew his engine, didn't have a spare, jumped in the flat out rental car, which had the fiberglass seat and stuff, and easily won the race. And that was just the clear indication that the cars are all capable of winning, but yet they're different. So I've raced in three different cars during the course of this Super Tour campaign, and each one is different. The seating position's a little different. The way the car handles is a little different. The flat out rental car that I've been driving in the East Coast races that I'll have at Mid Ohio, that car has always handled just a little better than any other spec racer that I've had the chance to drive. There's something magic about that particular car and how it feels when you're driving it. Now, all those differences are just tiny little differences because the cars truly are close to identical, but they do feel a little different, every one of them, and yet not so much that it's an excuse not to win.
So do you take some of that knowledge, like from when you get the feel of that flat out car, and then you go back to your car, do you say to the guys, okay, the car I drove at Mid-Ohio did this just a little bit better. Can we get my car to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're always working within the very limited parameters you have with the spec racer. You're always working on your setup to try to get it just right. And of course, that changes a little bit from track to track too. So you can't just say, oh, the car did great at Road Atlanta in the high speed turns, and it's not doing so well in high speed turns at a different track. Let's change the setup. The setup really has to be unique to the track and the track conditions and things like that. But you do try. I mean, I do try to do that a little bit. There's just something special about that flat out rental car, though. I got to say, I'm not sure what it is, and I don't think Flat Out knows what it is. There's just something about that car. It's always just turned in nice and crisply, and it just feels the cars are the same weight, and yet it feels somehow a little lighter and more nimble than the other spec racers I've been in, including.
And if the flat out guys did know, or they do know, they're not going to share it with you because they don't want your entire team to know, right?
Well, they might share it with me because I've been a good customer for a long time, but they're going to keep it as secret as they possibly can.
Sure.
That's for sure.
Tom, thank you so much. Appreciate having you on the show. I'm looking forward to catching up with you in a couple of days up at Portland. Good luck, and it's really awesome to see you doing the whole series this year. Not a lot of folks get to do that, and it just kind of sounds like your Walter Mitt moment.
I think that's exactly right. It's been a lot of fun. I encourage other people to give it a shot if you can, because it is really a lot of fun. But I look forward to seeing you in Portland, and I'm sure we're going to have a good race. Looks like the weather's going to be good, knock on wood. And so see you there.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com. Do you like what you see? Like what you hear? Join the RacingWire Podcast Network and the Racing Network on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe. Leave some comments. If you like the show, leave a good comment. If you didn't, don't leave a comment at all. It's all good. We have a new show every week. I'm Brian Bielanski. Have yourself a great week. Have fun, and go play with cars.